One of Russia's primary criticisms, which Putin made very explicitly in his February 24th, 2022 speech right after the invasion, is that the US treats other countries as inferior and essentially unworthy of their own sovereignty. So he said, quote, anything that does not suit the dominant state, the powers that be, that's us, the US, is denounced as archaic, obsolete, and useless. At the same time, anything it regards as useful is presented as the ultimate truth and forced on others regardless of the cost, abusively and by any means available. Those who refuse to comply are subjected to strong arm tactics. What I am saying now does not only concern Russia, and Russia is not the only country that is worried about this. That last sentence sounds very prophetic. He predicted that other countries would find themselves in Russia's position. Haven't we just proved him correct?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, Putin's interesting because he came in, and this is not at all an unusual thing to say about a Russian leader historically, but he came into the presidency. When was he first installed? Like 1999 or something. Um, he came in being kind of pro-Western and pro-American, and at least in the sense that he wanted Russia to kind of reintegrate with the West, and he thought, okay, the Cold War is over, this conflict is done. Russians had a bit of a different way of interpreting the end of the Cold War than the West did. We saw it as like a triumph. They saw it as like a voluntary collapse of the Soviet Union and moving on into this different era of Russian history. Um, and then over time, because in large part of American malfeasance and international law breaking and militarism, he got alienated from the United States. We also were probably worse than Russia in terms of these like Cold War era arms control agreements. We decided that we didn't really want those anymore. Russia is down. Russia is weak. Russia is just like a glorified gas station. Who cares about Russia? American elites really did have that attitude. And so, NATO expansion was part of that. The Iraq War was part of that. The intervention in Libya really pissed off Putin because he agreed not to block it at the United Nations Security Council, but then it went beyond what was authorized by the UN Security Council. It became like a regime change operation against Gaddafi. He was also upset about like Clinton's bombings of Serbia, which has like a kind of connection to Russia culturally. And so all of these actions by the United States did kind of help create the Putin that we see today. And I don't know what your view is of Putin exactly, but like I think he's a pretty bad guy, And but I think that he, the United States really mismanaged its relations with Russia, and kind of created this monster of like Putin's Russia today. He's not at all unique within the Kremlin. He actually has like more hardline people to his nationalist right, compared to them, he's kind of pragmatic. And so I think Putin developed this extreme cynicism about international law and this feeling that like if America doesn't have to comply with international law, why should Russia? Especially because a lot of Russians, probably including Putin himself, in the case of Ukraine, for example, they do think that is like something that they have a right to do, invading Ukraine, because of the treatment of the like alleged mistreatment of ethnic Russians in the Donbass, which the allegations have a lot of merit. So Putin became cynical about international law, and yeah, international law is something worth being cynical about. So so he said a lot of things that were true, and he, I think, basically recognized the hypocrisy that underpinned American action on the world stage. And so maybe some of his statements seem prophetic in that sense. But what I would point out is, like, he's also kind of participated in the erosion of international norms, right? It's not like he's this legal scholar or something, an angel and saint. So if Russia's invasion of Ukraine in part was motivated by this frustration with American violations of international law and militarism and hypocrisy, well, it also contributed to this erosion, right? And maybe, and when Trump first saw that, he said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. He's like a really strong leader who's exerting power in his region. I want to do that too if I become president again." Like, he literally said things like that. I'm not making that up. It's a paraphrase. But right after the invasion, there was a quote from Trump to that effect. So I think you could say that made this Venezuela thing more likely, because right wingers in America have this view of like, okay, we're in a world of like bad guys, and we're gonna have to be bad guys ourselves to advance American interests.